based on profession or, common interests like hunting or, playing poker. And that happened. With the internet, we can literally say, hey, who else is passionate about startups and Bitcoin? Oh, and you like hockey. And boom, you have 50,000 people around the world that are building startups, investing in Bitcoin and watching hockey every Saturday night. You get to meet those friends.
Perfect. Vadim, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Ravi, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So this is kind of unique because you're a fellow podcaster yourself, I discovered. Generally when people come on our podcast, this is generally their first or very few they've done. So it's kind of cool having a fellow podcaster on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I want to say, and we spoke a little bit before this. I appreciate what you're doing. I respect what you're doing. I think, spotlighting other entrepreneurs is such an amazing way to, get to know them better. A little bit about myself. I am based out of Toronto. I'm a LegalTech entrepreneur. I'm currently building the future of incorporation in Canada, and genuinely, I've been involved with the startup community, for the past 7+ years. Failed a lot, learned even more, and more recently, sort of decided to start this company to sort of, really bring technology to an industry that's been, the legal industry that's been outdated and antiquated for so long. It's just, bleeds my heart that a lot of people are overpaying for something that is so simple as incorporation. So I would love to tell you more about that later during this episode.
Yeah. So going back to that, part of your bio is you were previously on Bay Street. You left for a PropTech company to found a company. What are you currently working on?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a LegalTech, and I guess before I get to that, maybe I'll just take a couple of steps back and sort of share a little bit about how I started. So I came to Canada when I was 17. I'm 24 now. I spoke very little English. I immigrated from Eastern Europe. I taught myself how to speak English by watching YouTube videos and reading books. And then, I ended up graduating from school, went to work in finance, made my parents really, really proud. But that wasn't really sitting well with me because I wasn't genuinely happy doing that, right? It's kind of like those golden handcuffs where, you get the biweekly paycheck and you're sort of set for life because, when you work on wealth management or investment management, you have a really bright career future for yourself. But it wasn't appealing to me on the same level as, say, entrepreneurship was. I looked around, I saw Mark Zuckerberg, I saw, founders of WeWork and Uber and Airbnb, and everybody was changing the world, and all I was doing was filling out Excel spreadsheets for investors and rich people and make rich people richer. So I decided, let me take a leap. And I essentially what happened was the moment I realized I don't want to do this anymore, I announced my resignation. I taught myself how to code, and my first ever startup that you asked about was actually PropTech. Startup that connected real estate properties on the commercial side, so office, industrial, retail, with small size tenants. And the reason for that was very, economically related to the way how brokers are compensated. You get $1 per square foot per year. And when you're talking about leasing a very tiny office somewhere in the basement of an office building, a lot of brokers just weren't interested in spending weeks and weeks to kind of push that deal through the finish line. So what we did, we created a marketplace, an Airbnb for office spaces. And that's how I got my start in the tech space. I knew absolutely nothing about entrepreneurship other than that you have to create something that adds value and then hope to capture some of that value in the form of revenue. That I knew. And I didn't know how to code, so I had to teach myself how to code. And we actually, I was lucky enough to have a co-founder that was my fellow friend from college. We went to college together. We never really studied. We spent most of our time trading stocks in the library and just showing up to final exams, which was fun. But reconnected with him several years later and just said, him at that time, he already was involved in some entrepreneurial ventures with his family. And I was also kind of, I had that seed in my head, back to the inception analogy, it was already there. I just needed the right push. And finally, he kind of told me about his exciting story. And I said, listen, it seems like I'm missing out. I want to do the same thing. So we decided to do the PropTech.
Fascinating. So, I mean, ooh, I kind of lost you here for a bit. Can you see me,
Yeah, no, everything's good. Yeah,
Vadim?
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So we're having some connectivity issues. The internet quality has really been bad the last this past week, but I think we're still recording here. But yeah, Vadim, going back to that, you give us a few elements to break down. Now, like this, being unsatisfied in this great role in finance that your family was so proud of you, and leaving that, I think there's a testament that a lot of entrepreneurs find, right? They find themselves in these situations where they have hit every goal, every milestone, and yet they're not fulfilled, right? Can you talk a little bit more about the idea of entrepreneurship? What gap did it fill in your life that a stable job didn't?
I think, Ravi, for a lot of people like ourselves, we grow up trying to please other people, make our parents proud of us. We are ingrained with, our society and our environment basically dictates what we should be celebrating and the kinds of career paths and achievements we should be picking. A really good example would be to talk about any Eastern European or Middle Eastern or Asian family where essentially your parents want you to be an engineer, doctor, or lawyer. That's no secret. For us, it was a very similar path where we also wanted to get embedded in finance, and my parents wanted for me to be financially secure. But the moment I landed my feet, on the Canadian soil, I realized there is more to thrive towards. Sure, there is, security of a paycheck. But the moment you get to that point, you're sort of thinking, what's next? What's that other challenge that, you want to take on? And to me, it wasn't about keeping the job and just keep doing the same thing. It was about discovery. It was about learning new skills. My brain always went into different directions. Ooh, what if I can code? Or, what can I teach myself how to invest? Or what can I, what if? My brain always kept asking. And I find that this is like a common thread among entrepreneurs, is the natural born curiosity. They don't get to where they are today because their families forced them to be, or their economic situation forced them to be. They get to start businesses because they're curious about things that could be done differently, or why the status quo has been the way it's always been for the past several years. And so, what really wasn't satisfiable for me in my work environment is that ceiling. I knew no matter how hard I'm gonna work, I'm still gonna stay in the same level. I'm still gonna sort of stay in this lane and just keep growing within that same lane. For me, the unknown, the environment where there is no rules, the scenario where I get to chart my own journey and my own destiny, that really appealed to me more. So to kind of answer your question by summarizing in a couple of words, the uncertainty and ability to chart my own future instead of following the existing playbook and just playing within certain rules. That was really a big difference for me.
I love that. I love that a lot because I think that's not talked about enough, right? The willingness to go out and take life on your own and solve challenges. It's like I kind of take it akin to almost like hunting. You're kind of going into the wilderness to kind of prove to yourself you can survive. Have you ever watched the show Vikings?
No, but I heard it's really good.
It was on Netflix for a while.
Yeah, I think it's still one of the top shows.
In Vikings, so in Vikings, Vikings are probably one of the most entrepreneurial cultures. The way they raid coastal villages and the way they work together in groups, it's very entrepreneurial. People come together and do these ventures, which was raiding and stealing from other people, but was considered a venture. Everyone kind of came together, did this task together, and then divide the spoils together. And one of the really cool things about that culture is there's this one character. He went off into the woods by himself in the middle of the complete wilderness for a year. He has to prove to himself that he can, right? And I was remembering, I was looking at this while reading, not reading, but I was listening to the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, who talked about this, right? How salaries kind of trap you, because employees, if you look at the ecosystem that is our economy, employees are the most secure members of our economy. Legally, the most protected. Even if a company goes in insolvency, the shareholders are legally obligated to make sure the employees get paid, and they can go to jail, face penalties, and the directors can go to jail and face penalties if the employees do not get paid first. Like you're legally obligated to make sure the employees are taken care of. So by being an employee, you're part of this protected class, people that are, the system is taking care of you. But again, it's setting the rules for you, setting where how much of your money is going into taxes is already preset. How much of your money is going into investments? How much of your money is going into insurance? Like it's like all these things are already tabulated and done for you. So it's like it puts you in like an ease situation.
Yeah.
And it used to be like people would work like 30, 40 years at a company or a government job, these safe jobs. That's the ideal thing, and the system just takes care of you, and all you got to do is show up every day, right? And it's like, but like again, like like if you look at the other class of people who are like the people who are out there building, right? There are small business owners. They're the investor class who uses money itself as like a vehicle to make returns, right? And then there's people who run and own enterprises, right? Large businesses that are like cash flow machines. And within the ecosystem, right? The people who are the employees are like the sheep, like almost, right? Like are taken care of. Like you're being farmed by the system, right? When you exit that, like you can almost become almost like a Viking, like leaving that kind of safety nest and going out to explore what you can build for yourself.
Yeah. And some people are not comfortable with that too, right? Like they, if you, back to your point, if you spend 40 years in the institution, and I think in Japan, it was actually unheard of for a person to leave a company. Can you believe that? So you would graduate and you would work in the same company your entire life, and that was considered honorable, right thing to do in Japan. And of course, things have changed since then, but 50, 100 years ago, that was the way things were. And so imagine yourself losing a job. Imagine, because we think about this as a very safe, protective environment, but let's not forget there is crises, there is recessions. Even recent experience with COVID. I'm sure a lot. I'm obviously sympathetic, but I'm sure you've heard about a lot of your close friends or connections, or even just about people getting laid off, and that really proven to us that the system isn't safe. It really proven that even if we commit years and years of our life and skill set to certain company, doesn't guarantee that we're going to have that job tomorrow. To me, and I really think that entrepreneurship is undervalued in this way. I think entrepreneurship is overvalued in many ways, right? But I think the way it's been undervalued is really from a position of risk, and how much of this risk that a person needs to take, whether that's sweat equity or put in real cash into a business before you see any results. I mean, I can speak about this scenario from my own experience. I'm building a business right now. First of all, I've been doing this for 7 years. Second of all, I'm building this business right now. I mean, I've been working on it for at least a year and a half. And the first year, I didn't even have a single client. And that's not because I wasn't a good entrepreneur, or because it was too complex to develop or whatever. It just takes a very long time to research and understand and have conversations, and there is a lot that goes into creating companies that we know of that are unicorns, right? First couple of years it's flat, and then all of a sudden we see them taking off, the proverbial hockey stick. Well, for you to get to hockey stick, and really the hockey sticks are being celebrated, but we're not celebrating the grit and perseverance and the risk that a lot of people are taking when there is no results coming in. It's very easy to show up to the job or show up to a company that's doing fantastically well, and you continue pushing that machine forward. It's very hard to force yourself to show up one more day, when you've done so much for so long and nothing came out of it. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs are not being celebrated for enough.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think the solution to that is? How do we celebrate that?
Well, I think it's about educating people. First of all, when you're starting out a company, I think a lot of people don't know what they're getting themselves into. Entrepreneurship is not this sort of like, I have an idea, I'm going to raise $5 million and everybody's going to celebrate me, right? Having that mentality just means that you spend more time on TechCrunch and Crunchbase and all the, in Canada we have BetaKit, but it just means that you're getting exposed to all the successes and no failures. I think we should really celebrate failures, and we should really be transparent about. Before Travis Kalanick ended up building Uber, he failed many times on some really ridiculous ideas. And that came to nothing. Before, I don't know, Elon Musk, in businesses that he's been building, we know him for SpaceX and Tesla, and to a certain degree for PayPal. But, before that, he couldn't even get a job, right? And so, there's a lot of things that precede success. And I really truly believe that having a podcast, for example, and you're talking to a lot of founders, that's great. You're eliminating that environment where founders can come on and say, well, Ravi, this is my 5th startup. My first 4 startup didn't get anywhere. And I'm still here, I'm still building, and now it's finally working out. It's the same story I have. I've been doing this for 7 years, and my previous ventures didn't really come to as much success as I wanted them to be. But it's still in the game, still playing, still working hard, and finally it's coming to something. I would love to put all and this is just my my selfish dream, and I don't know if somebody's got enough clout, maybe you do, right, to kind of make that happen, but really to interview the most successful entrepreneurs out there, the Michael Cutchins of Wealth Simple, and Andrews D'Souza's from Clearbank, and just say, hey, let's shelf your successes for a little while, because those are very public and very known to the society. Let's talk about the first 10 years, okay? Tell me about your failures, and I would love for that conversation to happen. Like I said, I don't know who might be able to pull this off, but that to me is worth a lot of money, and I would watch that. I would subscribe to that. I would love to see where people where people that are succeeding right now have failed before, because that to me just shows that they're human. It shows me that there is no such thing as a perfect entrepreneur, natural born entrepreneur. You sort of figure out your way, and there's mistakes involved. And I don't think we talk a lot about mistakes. And when you're in school and you get bad grades, and your parents are slamming you for bad grades. I was slammed for having bad grades, and I couldn't go out play with kids because I had to study. But ingraining in somebody's head that failure is part of your journey to success is so much more powerful and so much more enabling in the long term.
I love exactly what you said there. Especially with celebrating failures. I'm all about that too. I would love to bring in, established entrepreneurs. Cool, but where did you fail at? Where were you bad at? Where did you have to learn from? But more than that, I love talking to people who are in the build, right? So that's why most of our podcast guests, generally we go across. We're agnostic to the industry, we're agnostic to your size, all that, but generally we target early stage founders. People are in the grind, in the mix, building things. And it's been interesting, of the 100+ episodes we've done, 3 companies have grown in the last 2 years. One company is now a $100 million company. Another company, 2 other companies are a $20 million company, right? And we saw the entrepreneurs on the ground level when they were building this, right, because of the podcast. And the way, Vadim, the way you kind of put it is that fascination with seeing the grind process. The way I see it is if we're talking to enough early stage founders, well, as they develop and grow, we're going to see that, right? Just playing the odds. By talking to founders, coming and solving these really cool, interesting problems and challenges. We get to pick and choose who comes on the episodes, but really, what we're really looking for is people in that grind, in that mix, who are nose the wall, trying to figure out how to make solutions in the problem they're trying to fix.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when you're taking advice from somebody who's already successful, it's not necessarily, it's very motivational, but it's not necessarily helpful, because somebody who's got $20 million in the bank and massive connections and Rolodex and went to Yale and graduated to top of their class, and their professor who actually hangs out with Jeff Bezos now became your angel investor in your network. That's very different from say a scrappy kid from college that couldn't afford to go to a top tier school, ended up graduating maybe 1 year ahead of the time because just had to compress his tuition time so he can start working, and now building a company. And then I say, hey, tell me about how is it going? It's been maybe 6 months, maybe it's been a year. I would love to know. Those kinds of conversations are so much more valuable to somebody who's in the grind right now building a business. It's very easy to sort of like connect the dots looking back. It's very hard to sort of, say if my business is going to work out next year or your business is going to work out next year. So I love the mindsets. I love talking to people, and it's not necessarily the decisions that they make, the actions, but it's sort of like why the way they come to these decisions that really excites me. I could spend days and weeks, and I'm sure you know about Clubhouse, but even before Clubhouse, there's Zoom and startup meetup.com, and all these communities where what I really loved is just meeting other entrepreneurs that are in the same shoes, and then talking about the same challenges and see how different people are solving these challenges. I think that's really powerful. Creating a support group, even if it's like a peer network, not necessarily a mentorship circle, but maybe just people that are sort of in the same shoes, and you can share tactics and resources and news. And I've tried this, I've sent out cold emails and it didn't work, but I did some marketing and social media blew up, and I got just having these conversations just so much more powerful than listening to. And again, nothing against these successful people. Hearing about somebody's raising round D at the $1 billion valuation doesn't help me a startup with one client and me doing all the work to sort of there's nothing for me to learn from that, right? I enjoy talking to people. I would love to actually ask you, what are some of the things that, maybe this is just a selfish question because I also would love to learn from you, but you've done about 140 plus episodes. What are you seeing? What are some of the common threads that you kind of see that people have, whether that's character traits or personality traits or just the kinds of things that they've done with their businesses, maybe like hustle. I don't know what it is, man, but I would love to know, for those companies that went from 0 to 200 million, 100 million, you've mentioned a couple of them, what was that in that early conversation between you and them that was like, wait a minute, this guy is onto something, or this gal is onto something? Have you ever, do you ever feel that way when you talk to them, or is it still not clear whether they're actually going somewhere?
So the main theme that I pick up of everyone that has come to the episodes and come on is hunger, right? It can be different industries at different levels, different age groups, all these things, but they have this instinctual hunger in them for something, right? For each of them, the hunger could be different, right? The different outcomes, and what I realize is not all of them the outcome is money. They see it, the profit is definitely a motive, but it's not the imperative. It's something extra to that, right? By the enterprise they're doing is almost like a vehicle towards solving that hunger, that personal hunger, right? That they've attached to a larger problem. It's really interesting you say that because we were just talking about this earlier about this idea of what is a common thread among entrepreneurs, right? What sets them apart, and what makes someone an entrepreneur? Because I think the statistic is only 10% of the population is entrepreneurial minded, and I think that blows my mind because being in the innovation industry, we meet so many people from so many different walks of life who are taking these risks and doing these things, but it goes back to age-old questions: are entrepreneurs born or entrepreneurs made? I personally think the answer is both. Some people are predetermined; they're gonna go out and do it. They become independent no matter what. Other people, they see a vantage point and they see an opportunity and they have the skills and resources and they make that leap, right? But only because they see the opportunity and they have established themselves at a certain level of skills, of knowledge, of network. They have something, right? So one of the things that we ask on our episodes is we actually measure a spectrum. We see entrepreneurs fit into two camps in a spectrum. One is the visionary types, and others are the executive types.
I love
right?
it.
The visionaries are the ones that see the hallowed mountaintop, right? They're haunted by this vision of a world that could be, with the solution in mind. And regardless of where they go, they always see this mountaintop and they're drawn to this idea. They got to do it. And and that vision is what drives them forward. Right there, they keep climbing the mountain no matter what. On the other level, on the other side of the scale is the executor type of entrepreneur, right? The person who has gone and developed some great skill, knowledge, or network in some particular area. So went in the legal field, became a lawyer, understood how the legal system works, saw a strategic blank that's missing, and said, oh, technology can really solve this problem here, or a company can, a product or service or a process automation can really solve this problem here, and is making that leap. But as first, like, establish themselves with deep knowledge and deep networks and deep understandings, and because they have that, they can see a strategic blank, and they can operate underneath that. So there's really this spectrum, and everyone kind of falls in between somewhere here.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, like, a good company should have people with a mix of these talents, right? If there's a visionary, in our company, me and my co-founder, we call ourselves a hustler versus a hacker,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So me, I'm objective oriented. I'm like, how is this going to make us money? How is this going to give us resources? How is it going to feed us moving forward? And I'm thinking about ROIs. I'm thinking about, yeah, if we're jumping out of we're going to jump out of this plane and build a parachute on the way down, but I'm going to pre-order that parachute. I'm going to get some pre-orders for that parachute,
Yeah.
and that's the way I think about it. Whereas the hacker mentality, my co-founder Henry, he's more like, let's build this thing, right? How's it gonna really work? How's it gonna bring value? Let's build it, and then we'll find people for it. And this dynamo of going back and forth really pushes us forward, right? I used to challenge this notion a lot that great companies are built with two or more founders, 2 to 3 founders. And there used to be a idea behind it's being safer. If it happens to something happens to one person, at least the other person's there for the company, yada yada. That's more shareholder stuff, but really it's about doing the build side of things, right? Because there's so many different complications, so many different things happening, and even like personal energies and so much dependence on the individual level of a company being birthed out, that having a good co-founder, I think, is one of the most principally important things. Especially when you counterbalance each other on that spectrum of skills.
Yeah, I had goosebumps here when you were talking about the spectrum, because I 100% agree with you in terms of ideation versus execution. I think we're sort of talking about the same thing, but which one is more important? And I keep coming back to it because you said something really interesting there. You said 10% of people in this world are, have the entrepreneurial tendencies or have the entrepreneurial sort of vision, but even less people actually end up succeeding. So the question is, what is the component that's missing that those 10%, why does 10% go down to say 2% or 1% or even 0.01%? In this world? And I think the answer is really execution. As you were talking, I sort of just said to myself, sometimes you have the idea, but you kind of need to get off the couch and kind of get going and do it. I got a lot of admiration for small businesses for one specific reason. The vision usually is not that different from a very close competitor. One restaurant has very little variation from like a visionary or vision perspective from another restaurant. Especially if they're both selling Thai food. One insurance provider may have better mobile experience, and sure, they might have that vision of being mobile first, but at the end of the day, they're offering a commodity product, which is insurance. And I can keep going and going, but the reason why you got the Rockefellers and you got, JP Morgans and all, kinds of people like that built empires in the old world and then translated that into oil and railway and, manufacturing empires in the new world here in, Canada, North America, the US, is because these people just had the execution and they saw the opportunity, but they also realized they need capital, they need resources, they need people. I can never build an oil empire that Royal Dutch Shell built decades ago because I have the vision, but can I do it? You know what I mean, right? So like I really think that both is the good answer, having both. And you're right about the spectrum. It's never either or. I like the spectrum analogy. I found through my personal experience that execution sometimes tends to matter more than ideation. And I'm very similar to you, Ravi. I'm the kind of person that has, the spreadsheets and flowcharts and to-do lists, and I need to plan. I need to figure this out. I need to sit down and figure out how is this going to work? Where is this going to come from? Who's going to use this? What's so different between us and the other person? And like, how can we realistically, achieve what we want? Can we achieve what we want? Given the constrained resources? I'm a product person. That these are the kinds of questions that I always ask about the products. But the success really, I feel like, you've got your vision, you figured out what you want to do, but then you need to grind. and you need to grow. And I've seen, and I don't remember if it was a Crunchbase or one of those sources, and they had these like math calculation, and it basically said, amazing idea, poor execution equals 0, right? And it's kind of like a scale. It's like, amazing idea, no execution. It's like, great idea and okay execution. And then it's like great execution, okay idea, and then amazing execution, terrible idea. And they had these like four different like combinations of it, right? And I think the biggest numbers usually come out on where the execution really drives the whole thing. So you can have a terrible idea and execute it tremendously well, and you're still going to have an amazing business, a very successful business. You can have a little bit of a vision and have a 75% of the execution department. You can really, literally crush the world, right? Like you can do whatever you want. But if you have zero execution, no matter how brilliant your idea is, no matter how much of a vision, how big of a mountaintop you're seeing, back to the analogy with the Royal Dutch shell, like there is no way I can build something like that today, and that's because I'm not set for that. I might be set for something else, an idea within my realm of expertise that I can sort of come in and make the difference. But execution matters. So.
I love this. I love the transparency you're talking about here, because I think that's also another concept that I found really interesting with people trying to solve hard problems, right? Innovators, is that surprisingly, it's one of those things that's really surprised me, is that people are super transparent with their thoughts and their ideas and their hopes, and really what they want to build, right? Like when you engage like an entrepreneur in true honest discussion about what they're doing, they're so open to open up. Like it's almost like someone talking about their child or like their pet, right? Like people talk about their business with this such pride and passion, and people are willing to open up about it. And what I'm really interested in about it is like, especially through podcasting and through other forms of media, transparency has become easier. It's easier to get your story out, and especially as we move to a world where we're more centered around subjective truths rather than objective truths. Like we no longer have like a media corp that projects itself as the absolute source of all news and information and of truth anymore, right? We don't have these centralized agencies of truth anymore. Like the internet has kind of segmented us into almost like into more social followers, right? We have these we have influence circles that we are into, and we're like the algorithms have pushed us into, and we get our source of truths from them. And in such a subjective world, I think it's so super important to be transparent about your objectives and values. And I think that's what podcasting really gives a voice to and power to, right? So you get to cultivate an audience, you get to cultivate a community based off of a shared set of values. And all you have to do is just communicate them transparently. This is what I believe in. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. And if you're clear and consistent with it, you can build this tribe now pretty easily and effectively. Because the social media platforms will literally like, the algorithms will literally like set you up and queue you up. They'll profile you and find other people who believe in this kind of stuff and put your image, put your messaging out there. You can find your tribe easier now than ever. You can build a tribe even better than ever before. So I think this idea is that we're becoming more and more tribal as we become more into the internet. I love this idea by Naval Ravikant. The internet is making us regressing us culturally, and I see it. Right, we're finding these digital tribes, digital identities online, and we have our shared set of values as developing groups. So I think soon we're gonna transfer more into like these colonies of people who like build projects and do things virtually online with people that they have shared values with. I know so many founders of so many companies who have hired and are working with people across the world who they have never met for the past year.
Yeah.
They're scaling, they're operating, and they're hiring people, and they're meeting people, they're hiring and depending on people to work on this high growth company or this startup, and with the venture backed capital, but they have never met them. And it's happening more and more and more. So I think we're becoming more and more intertwined into this digital world. And how do we blend and how do we operate in that? I think it's about operating under a shared set of values.
I think you're so right. The internet is making us able to find each other, discover each other. we started off with, sitting around campfires and really have no choice who we tend to hang out with. We had one tribe, there's 50 people, they're all sitting around, they all have responsibilities, but there's no way for me to say, I don't like you, I want to go to another tribe, I want to find more friends there. And then all of a sudden we built, cities and towns and electricity came about and we could travel and we could, move from town to town. We can find our calling. We can make friends, based on profession or common interests like hunting or playing poker, and that happened with the internet. We can literally say, hey, who else is passionate about startups and Bitcoin? Oh, and you like hockey, and boom, you have 50,000 people around the world that are building startups, investing in Bitcoin, and watching hockey every Saturday night. You get to meet those friends, but don't forget and see what I've done there. It's always been tribal, right? We've started there, we've progressed that same way, we've always been that way, and technology really hasn't changed anything other than it gave us more people, more dots and connections to sort of establish. It gave us better ways to filter and refine our network. We can now pick and choose who we want to connect with, who we want to hang out with. We know there is always more people to meet. We have literally unlimited number of people in our networks now with social media and everything that's going on. But it's still the same bonding principle. You've got people that support you, you support them. I argue that right now my circle is more tight than ever. Even though I know more people than I've ever known, my circle, my actual circle of people that I trust and go for advice to, and people that I can work with, and people that I will take guidance from, is smaller than ever. And this is because trust and being able to really know that person is way more important now than it's ever been. I think that the currency in the digital world, and why what you were talking about, everything is subjective, and everything is subjective, but the person that you really anchor towards, either on social media or when you're building a business, is the person that you can trust. Because again, we don't have time to research and identify every person in our network, so we default towards our animalistic sort of reactions, which is fight or flight. Do I trust? Do I like this person, or are they sending mixed signals and I'm not sure where this is going, or do I completely dislike them and I never want to talk? I'm just going to stay away from them and whatever it is. In the world where everything moves so fast, we don't have much time to figure out if we want to learn more about this person. You and I, 15 minutes into this conversation, already knew if we like each other, if we want to work with each other, if we want to just keep it professional and kind of end this on the interview and never talk to each other again, or maybe we don't even agree with each other. We knew right away. We knew. And 3-4 years later, when I'm thinking about building a media company, and I'm thinking, wow, I really need somebody that can help me. For example, right, somebody that can help me establish a podcasting presence. I wonder if Ravi is around. I wonder what he's up to. Let me call, because my brain remembers, right? I instantly, I see your name on LinkedIn, I see your picture, I instantly have that reaction about you. Do I like you? Do I trust you? No, I'm not sure, or no, not at all. And that's how it works. And so, I don't know what else to say other than, the biggest currency that you can develop with your community and your following right now is trust. Look at what happens with the soccer league in Europe. I don't know if you're following the news, but there's been some takeover. 15 elite clubs, Real, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, they all decided to, create their own league. And, to be honest and fair with you, I was for that development. I like seeing more quality matches. And so I kind of, but the fans reacted in the most profound ways. They burned, jerseys on the sticks and painted stadiums with the, graffiti, cans, because it was just these clubs betrayed their trust. They went in for money. They wanted more money. They didn't care about the fans. They didn't care about the league. They didn't care about the tradition. The moment you start pulling on shady shit like that, that's how you lose trust real quick. And I think you're gonna see more and more fans following smaller teams, teams that maybe number 5 and number 10 in the league, because they didn't do that, and they were consistent with their fans, and and so they didn't stab anybody in the back. I'm just giving you one of the examples, just a very recent thing that happened, and so, but it's a really good example of how not to do in the world of business. Backstabbing and all that's not going to get you anywhere. You really need to preserve that trust because it's very important commodity and currency in this new world. I would love to know your thoughts on that, and it's okay if you completely disagree with me. Like, I love having this conversation. I just want to know, like, what do you think is really the how do you decide who to work with, who not to work with? Like, how does that work for you? I'm just curious.
No, I think you covered it right well. Like for me, I get cold outreaches all the time from salespeople trying to sell me things, and I barely respond. Usually, I tell them I'm not interested. One word or one sentence replies, right, and leave it at that. But the ones I generally work with, I might not even need their services right now, but the ones who make it out of a point to create a relationship, there's a great company that I love. It's called Peninsula. It's an HR outsourcing firm, right? So you can pay them a subscription amount, and they'll do all your HR paperwork, help you make sure you're up to HR, like human resource standards, all these kind of things. They do actually do a really valuable service for high growth companies, especially people in the growth stage things. And their packages are amazing. But one of the things I loved about them is like I never had the reason to use them yet because I haven't grown my company to the size it needs it, but I will always 100% go there just because how the company is. Every 3 months, a representative from Peninsula will call me and just ask, "Hey, how's it going? What are you guys working on? Like, what are what's an update?" And they generally will want to listen and hear that. And they're like, what we do is like, when you're ready, we're here for you. And it's just that, right? Like, it's like a 5-minute, 10-minute call. Generally, I don't even get that many. You don't get much random calls. All my calls are scheduled, but they call out of the blue, and just say what's up. And I think that is more than anything else. That really is the future of business, right? It's social commerce. It's social capitalism. People don't care. People want to follow you. People that don't just want to do business with you. They want to know who you are, right? There's this great meme that has been going around. It's like, on LinkedIn, there are more people following Bill Gates than Microsoft. There's more people following Jeff Bezos than Amazon. And the idea is that people buy from people. They love the story of the people behind the business entity, and it's part of the reason why they buy from it. Why does Elon Musk's companies trade for 222 times revenue on the stock exchange, even though they barely spend any money on marketing? Is because of the cult of Elon, right? The transparency and the way he communicates. He has such a loyal fan base that he has the advocates speak for him. He doesn't need to, right? So I think we're moving more in this realm, in this area, in this reality of living more in subjective truths. Again, going backwards, like we're looking for idols, we're looking for hero worship, we're looking for people, for leaders, for leadership, and those who can just stand out. And you don't necessarily need to be the source of truth, but in whatever industry, just be like, hey, this is what I do know. I'm willing to share it with you and use it to build relationships. Gary Vee has like a really, really good, series of talks about this. And his book, what's it? Jab, 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 right hook, or left hook, right? Is like is like a great. I think it's basically saying, give, ask. Right, so using content, especially, you can give people away your secrets, things that you've learned, things that have taken you like days, months of your time to learn, and you just give it away. People who actually are looking for it love that so much, right? Because you've saved them so much time. Me for instance, I remember it took me like my first time raising money. It took me like 7 months to seal a deal, not just because of paperwork, but for me to understand what was happening. It took me that I made sure to take the time to understand each key point, all these kind of things. And then what I started doing is later on as an entrepreneur residence is like that all those learnings I would summarize and give to people just for free. And the reaction I would get is just like most people doesn't care. Other people don't understand the value of it. But very few people like, I had that question. I didn't even know how to frame that question properly. You saved me so much time of thinking about what I didn't even know. So like this aspect of like how to use knowledge, right? I think we're moving to an area realm. The economy is moving from information workers to knowledge workers because of the fourth industrial revolution. So just like between the second and third industrial revolution of mass production and industrialization going out, creating a wave of white collar workers, lifting people from labor-based jobs into information-based jobs, using machines as throughput, being informational layers. Now we're moving into because the fourth industrial revolution, because of AI and the intelligence revolution, the machine revolution, we're becoming knowledge workers, people who are using deep knowledge, understanding to create scalable systems. So whether that be a product or a startup, or just a service, or like a freelancer, there's different realms that you can operate in, but you're generally operating around realms of deep knowledge in a certain industry, and trying to find ways to intersect it with other industries, share those skills. So knowledge workers has become more and more a thing. Knowledge is going to become more of a commodity. So by sharing knowledge, you can gain transparency, trust, and transparency on what you do, and people respect you for it. And you gain appreciation, and slowly, as like the people find, you build a tribe around you of advocates who can advocate for you. You can develop an ecosystem of those you trust around you. So I believe the future is becoming more social, and the way we fix capitalism is turn it from like the profit focused entity it is into more social capitalism, which is focused on the impacts just as importantly as the profits are. Because underneath it all is creating relationships and measuring those relationships, because the products, service, the companies might turn out and change and morph, because we're going to ever changing, faster changing world. What you deliver might change, but the audience and the people you work with, they know what the problems you're trying to solve are, right? And they'll stick with you.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And even back to the point of we need a hero, we need an idol. I've been sort of contemplating the idea of the having 50 to 100 people that are not necessarily influencers, but they're sort of like micro influencers. I'm talking about people that have 500 followers in their network, but because their network is so tight, those 500 people religiously follow that person's advice, right? So we kind of we went from having one person dictating, like you said, back to that media example of three white people telling everybody what the news should be in America or in the world, versus now there's so many versions of truth, and it's really hard to say, okay, do I trust them? Do I trust? Everybody's got biases, right? That's why you kind of default back to somebody that you're comfortable with, you're familiar with. I've been sort of like reconciling how I consume, offers, news, recommendations, and I realized, back to your point, it's exactly through people that I absolutely trust and I follow, and I know them. I've been with them for so long that what they say makes so much sense. I get back to your point. I get hundreds of messages on LinkedIn. Buy my stuff. Check out my website. But people that are in my network, like people that I'm close with, I will buy it from them. This is crazy, really. This is crazy because I actually offer this several times this month. I would buy something from somebody. I don't even know if they're the best. I don't know if they're ready. I will just give them my business because I want to support them, because I trust they will not sleep at night trying to figure out how to make it work. That's it, right? Like the HR softwares of the world that you mentioned, or for me it could be a legal services or bookkeeping or anything for that matter. If there's a person in my network that says, "Hey Vadim, I started this out. Can you help me? Can you give me some feedback?" I'll be like, "Great. By the way, I'll be your first client," just because like I just want that for them. But I also know that they'll have my best interests in mind when they're building this out. And so maybe this is like one of the last points. I know we're running short on time for minutes to go, but this really is where the world, I feel like, is going. If you're building a business right now, I don't think that you can just get away with pumping out content or paying for ads, or even paying these large influencers, because we're already primed to see ads. We're already primed to read that content, and at the bottom it says, buy my stuff. We're already primed to expect a person with 1 billion or whatever followers on Instagram to always have product placements in their posts. We're primed for that. But where the future is going, where the next opportunity really is, in my opinion, is people with 500 followers that truly believe in your product, and they'll do a shout out, and those 500 people will trust them, and then people that trust them will trust them, and now you're building on top of micro influencers, quote unquote, people in your network, your second degree connections. It is really powerful. LinkedIn has been such a great place for me to build my own business. I'm sympathetic of people that are building B2C, but I'm very familiar with founders in my network that said, and this is a quote from a real person. She said, the person did LegalTech before, and then she launched a jewelry business. How different is that, right? You're thinking people that bought legal services will not necessarily buy jewelry, but she said they did, and the reason they did was because they trusted me. And then when she recommended somebody else's services to her network, they bought because of the credibility that person has. So to kind of wrap it up, I guess, and I don't know if you have any more questions, but really. It's really about the people around you. It's about building trust and relationships, strong relationships with people. I'm a big fan of 100 core fans. I know there's been in the startup world, there is something called 1,000 true fans or 100 true fans. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's when you're launching your product, the first thing you want to do is don't go broad, but go really deep and try to acquire 100 people that are absolutely in love with your product, and then let them champion it and become promoters and champions of your service. I have 100% subscribed to that. If you're launching a business today, don't worry about hundreds of millions. Don't worry about being everywhere. Don't worry about appeal to everyone. Appeal to 100 people really, really well, and then they will take your product further.
Vadim, I love that. That's a great milestone. It's a great figure to put into that. But the sentiment behind it is absolutely true. You find the loyal, diehard fans who love this product, who can see it through to the maturity where it goes from infancy to have all these holes into it to as it gets better and better. Having those advocates is everything. That I think that's what the future of business is building advocacy and developing a loyal fan base. It's going to be more community based. And speaking of that, I mean, this conversation itself, it's been spectacular because generally we focus more on a company and the build of it. But Vadim, with you, we moved into this talk about the values-based economy that's kind of
very philosophical,
and how we're motivated to that. Yeah. So I really appreciated this. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time.
I love it. Anytime, and if you're looking for more people for your podcast, I got some network of founders working on some really cool, exciting ideas, and I'll be happy to share what you're doing over here with the VX Disruptors podcast, and see if you want to have them on.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been an absolute pleasure. Stick around for a few minutes. Let's do a quick debrief. But for everyone who tuned in, this has been Vadim. Look him up. Where can people find you, Vadim?
Yeah, just go on LinkedIn, type in Vadim Lidich, or you can find me. I'm building a company called CoSquare, so CoSquare.co. That's what I'm doing during the day, but you can always connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out at vadim@cosquare.co, and I'll be sure to answer.